Yeah, welcome everyone to Module 9, Exploration, Risks and Learnings in the Himalayan web series. As usual, we are live every day, 8 o'clock in the morning at the given Zoom URL here. All the recordings will be posted on both Instagram and ultrajourneys.org. Keep yourself muted. We can have some Q&A towards the end of the session. Okay, so during the last 2 years, I've explored more than 160 passes, mostly lesser known passes like gateways across Pir Panjal, Dolador, only used by shepherds, so less touristic hiking routes. A couple of times got into some risky scenarios, sometimes life-threatening. So here I will go through a couple of real-life use cases and the learnings so that towards the future we can apply certain safeguards to minimize risk. Risks will be related to a number of things listed here. One is, of course, the higher altitudes. Getting lost is definitely a risky one in the Himalayas where the terrain is very steep. Getting lost can become quite dangerous to get back on the right routes. Extreme weather conditions, extreme as well as fast changing weather at high altitudes. The challenging terrain, obviously, like landslide, crevices, wild streams are definitely a challenging obstacle in many valleys. As you get in the lower valleys at lower altitudes, the amount of water in the streams increases and it becomes sometimes very challenging to cross these wild streams. To share a few words on wildlife and then also the seasons. Certain routes should only be done in certain seasons, so it's pretty important to be aware of where to go, when to go during the time of the year. I want to dedicate this session to Satya. I think Satya was my main inspiration, who made me overcome my fears of the unknown and start exploring some of the lesser known regions in the Himalayas. Satya maintains a beautiful blog, satyatravels.blogspot.com, which no doubt has inspired many. Has a lot of accurate information with accurate routes, reference points, waypoints, allowing other people to follow his footsteps. Unfortunately, Satya went missing in the summer of 2018 when he was on a 1-month exploration mission in Kinnaur. Okay, let's take the first case. This will be related to high altitudes. So this happened in summer 2018 when I was hiking with a friend in Zanskar to the Phirtse, which is one of the passes between Zanskar and Lahore. This was in the Kurgyak Valley. We are climbing up from Kurgyak around 4,000 meters to a pass at 5,530 meters, so quite high altitudes. Around 4,700-meter altitudes, so a couple of kilometers before the pass, my co-trekker Vishal ran into a situation where he got symptoms of AMS. He got a headache. His heartbeat was racing at 150 beats per minute, and he also showed low oxygen level. I was basically using this device, the oximeter, to keep an eye on his condition, as he has only joined me a couple of days back. I've been hiking at higher altitudes for a few weeks, but him being new, he had already spent like some 4 days to acclimatize in Zanskar, but still once we reached like 4,700 meters, he showed symptoms of AMS. So immediately we basically decided to cancel off the plan to cross the Phirtse on the same day. We came down 200 meters, set up a camp to give 1 more day of acclimatization, and basically that really helped. The next day he was much better and we could proceed by crossing the Phirtse. So the main learning here is that we should properly acclimatize, especially people joining in an ongoing mission. Being new to high altitude, should be careful not to go more than 500 meters up a day once you go above 3,000 meters. It's a very good idea to cancel this, to So we carry this little device called an oximeter, which shows both the heartbeats rate as well as the oxy level, and gives a clear understanding of the situation of the patient. Normally it should be around 80 to 90 in normal conditions. So once it goes below 70 or 60, it's time to come to lower altitudes. A second interesting case happened this year in June, when I was exploring one of the lesser known passes of the Dolador, the Waru pass, only used by shepherds. This year again, there was still a lot of snow in the month of June due to unprecedented snowfall the previous winters. The trail was completely unknown, not documented, as it's a shepherd trail. No hikers go there actually, so no blogs, no GPS routes, no maps that show the trail. As I was going up from the trail, I had some local information from the last village where I left, was going in the right direction. But somewhere midway, I basically took a wrong turn. It was like a confusing split. I took a gamble to go left. Unfortunately, it was right. I only came to know much later when I could see some shepherds on the opposite side of the valley. And I basically tried to come back from the left side of the valley to the right side of the valley, but got stuck in what you can see here, like almost these 100-meter vertical, near vertical drops, cut by side gullies into the valley, basically. So I was searching carefully how to cross these, almost impossible. I could just find, shown here, some very narrow openings, very steep, a little bit risky, with very less foothold or handhold to steeply get down onto the side gully, which you see there deep below, and get back to the right side of the valley. So I had to do some 2 free solo climbs to get back on track. So in general, if it gets really, if you're really completely off track, sometimes it's good, I would say, to really backtrace. So leave a digital breadcrumb trail. Always kind of keep track of a couple of waypoints along the way once you go off route, so that you can always track back to the last point. Here also, basically, I got stuck in pretty dense forests, which made the whole situation worse. Third one, real world case, was related to weather. So this I've been through a couple of times, I would say. So this I think I should start learning. So this is again in August 2018. I was climbing the Phirtse. Phirtse is used by shepherds to migrate every summer from Chamba Valley to the high alpine meadows of Lahore and Pangui. Here I was crossing the Chobia Pass, one of the more treacherous passes across the Phirtse. The trail again is not very clear once you go towards the pass itself. Once you get in loose scree, rocks, and alpine meadows, the trail tends to fade out. You just kind of try to find a way by looking at the poop of sheep. Again, I made a mistake here of trying to cross the pass in a single day, all the way from the last village in Lahore to across the pass and getting down again in the Chamba Valley. As a result, I was crossing the pass pretty late, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Normally, you should clear it, you should pass it in the morning when the weather is stable. I was able to still come down 700 meters, still around an altitude of 4,100 meters, when I got completely stuck in a dense fog, what we call a whiteout. So I only had 10 meters of visibility. I was trying to get further down, unable to find the trail, unable to even use the terrain map, because on all sides it was like steep vertical drops. So I was completely stuck. Previous day also I had lost my tent, so I had no other choice than, as shown here, to kind of lay down on my tarpaulin sheets with my sleeping bag, cover myself with a few small tarpaulin sheets which I had gotten in Udaipur on the way, and brace myself. It was raining that night, exposed to cold, sleeping on an incline was like quite a challenge. Next day the weather cleared, was able to get down. Within 1 hour, I was getting on the right track, getting down, having a cup of tea with a shepherd who was just camping 500 meters below me. So then the second problem happened due to flash floods. a couple of days back, many of these makeshift bridges you see here built by shepherds to cross the wild stream below the Chobia Pass had been washed away. And we were actually completely stuck on one side of the valley. There was no way in safely crossing the stream. So we are basically kind of walking with a couple of shepherds on near very steep slopes of the valley on one side of the wild stream. And so this continued for several hours until we were able to get further down into the valley and reach the first village. A very common case, I would say, of the wild streams. So this year in, I think it's in August, August 2019, I had to cross the Orna River in Zanskar. Orna River is a pretty ferocious river, especially in peak summer during July, August, when the glacial meltwater is high and the force of the river is very strong. So I'm just using some representative pictures here of a couple of nearby streams. I was not able to take pics while I was about to be washed away in the Orna River itself. But you can see in Zanskar, the rivers, the glacial meltwater gets cut very deeply in gorgeous kind of canyons into the surrounding landscape. So these are like pretty narrow valleys, and the force of the water can be enormous. So the key here is actually to always find a place where the river is wide, where basically the force of the water will be spread out over a wider breadth of the river. You should also cross it where it's basically not, flat, where it's not inclined, because the force of the water will again increase if the stream becomes steeper. So as you go over a flat, wide section, the depth of the water will be less. And it's also good to increase the number of points of contact. You don't want to walk as a human being with just 2 points of contact on an uneven riverbed full of loose rocks, where with every step, basically, you have only 1 point of contact left. So have at least 1 or 2 sticks, which gives you much better stability while crossing the stream. 2 more other things are there. If the stream really has a bad reputation, like the Orna, then you should actually cross later in the summer, say end of August or September, when there will be less glacial meltwater. Or another thing is to cross early morning. After a cold, freezing night, the flow of the water will be less than, say, in the afternoon, when the sun is at its peak and the water flow will also be at its peak. Very interesting, very common case are the landslides in the Himalayas, especially in recent years due to the recent climate changes. There have been more landslides. Sometimes huge parts of the mountains have come down. Here you can see a section of the Kaliheni Nalla on the way to Barabangal, where like generations old shepherd trails on the left side where I'm walking here have actually been completely washed away by this year. Actually in 2018 the same valley was still okay, only in 2019 this happened, probably due to unseen waterfall in these higher altitudes of the Himalayas. So here, say, like landslides can be very tricky, very loose rocks, loose soil. You slip down and you basically fall into a raging water stream below in the valley. Here we had the luck. In general, you should definitely use hiking poles over here to again have more points of contact, better stability. In this case, I was able to make use of frozen snow bridges, which were covering the river still, even at the end of the summer when normally it would be clear. 2018, this river was completely exposed. 2019 again, because of the heavy winter snowfall in the previous winter, it was still covered by tons and tons of frozen ice bridges. So this allowed me actually to jump from left to right of the valley and always proceed along the slope where it was gradual rather than getting stuck in a steep, loose, landslided slope. Wildlife is a common doubt from people. So in general, based on hiking almost more than a decade in South Indian jungles, I would say that the density of wildlife is much higher in South India, in the forest where the animals have cover. And I guess the food pyramid is better stuffed. In the high ranges of the Himalayas, I've seen much less traces of wildlife. Still, predators run around there. You have bears, been face to face with a black bear in Uttarakhand this summer, and here you can see some footprints of what I believe to be a big cat species, probably a snow leopard, in Zanskar, near the campsite actually where we had stayed. So the key here, I would say, is during the day, as you walk through the sanctuary where we are actually intruders into the space where animals live, you should always make your presence felt. I don't think humans are like a target for wild animals by default. They fear us. But of course, if we surprise them, if we basically corner them, then most likely they will get defensive and they might attack. So you should always make your presence be felt, which is okay if you're walking in open space, then animals will see you coming. If you walk in a forest or when there are a lot of big rocks or a noisy stream nearby, make sure to make your presence felt, that you avoid surprises and the animal basically hears you coming before it gets too close. During the night, I would say always try to find like a shelter or sleep with shepherds, or make it across the pass to lower altitudes where you'll find Gujar tribes or the first village. You can also make a small fire. Basically, animals are scared of fire in general. And of course, be careful with food. Don't keep food in the open, so as it might attract animals also. The seasons are very important. I mean, this summer I did 120 passes. Identifying the locations, the route to these passes was only a first step of the whole planning and preparation. The next almost equal intensive preparation was to plan a route through these 120 passes as in stitching them together, not in like order in terms of distance, but ordering them in terms of seasons. So only go to those passes which are suitable during certain seasons. So seasons are related to, I would say, 4 parameters. One obviously is the altitude. As you go towards the summer, the snow starts melting from the higher altitudes. So for example, in my scenario, I left in the month of May, did 30 passes in Uttarakhand. All these passes were below 4,000 meters. As in the month of May and even June, when I went to the Dolador, I still hit a lot of snow on those passes, making it quite difficult and even again dangerous as you walk on frozen snow on very steep, slippery slopes. The seasons, when we talk about the northwestern monsoon in July, August, you better want to avoid the lower Himalayas, which will face heavy rainfall, causing again wild water streams as well as a lot of landslides. So it's better to hit the high hits across the high ranges of the Pir Panjal and go towards Ladakh, Lahore, Zanskar or Spiti. Glacial melt then, this happens, as I mentioned, during peak summer in the months of July and first half of August, when there's a lot of snow, a lot of ice that melts at the beginning of the summer, so resulting in wild streams, which in some cases can be completely uncrossable, like some of the internal canyons inside the Hemis National Park that I was planning this year, but again, as on 16 August, some cloudburst was there. The streams became ferocious and it was impossible to go through these routes where you have to cross the stream as there are no bridges. And then the fourth aspect is the shepherd routes. As you go to the lesser known routes, which are only used by shepherds or local villagers who will sometimes go out to collect medicinal roots in the high alpine meadows, it's better to go through these passes after the shepherds open them. Like here you can see the Kalicho Pass, one of the most treacherous passes across the Bir Panjal again between Lahore and Chamba. Opening these passes yourself will be difficult as first of all you don't know the way. It's not like a straight up to the pass. Most of the passes are extremely steep. So shepherds will mostly approach them by gradually contouring upwards to the pass, either from the left side or the right side of the valley. And again, making a path through these steep sections can be quite multi-day affairs and difficult and challenging. A few more words on solo exploration. So obviously when you go alone in the wild and anything happens, whether it's like an accident, whether it's an injury, whether it's a sickness, you're completely on your own. There is nobody who knows that you're in trouble. There is nobody who can get help for you. So the risk is much higher. So it's very important to only do this gradually. So first stick to the well-known routes where there are frequent other hikers or villagers or shepherds, so that if anything happens, help will not be far away. Also build enough experience, fitness level, physical, mental fitness level is very important before you go to the lesser known places. Research the terrain very well, so don't go blindly to a place. I typically study maps for weeks and weeks, both satellite maps, looking at the terrain, as well as topographic maps, looking at the steepness, planning a possible route in advance before I even head out to an unknown mountain range. Weather forecast is extremely important. You don't want to get stuck at higher altitudes in a winter storm or a heavy cloudburst predicted. So, of course, it's not always easy. If you're roaming around in Zanskar and Ladakh, far away from any mobile internet, so it's going to be difficult to get an update, but still some of the shepherds carry these Philips AM radios with them, which probably listening to All India Radio give you regular news and weather updates. Respect the seasons. You don't see only the landscape, the routes, but look at the time of the year. Is it winter? Is it monsoon? Is it peak summer with peak melt? So respect the seasons, very important. Don't blindly choose a route at any time of the year. Schedule with your friends or with the home base so that people know what's your plan for the next 1 week to the next place where again you can call, check in, give them an update that you're fine, and again communicate them the next section so that at least people know when you don't call in for a noticeable time that something might be wrong. And then one very useful device which I'm showing here is the spot tracker. This is basically a broadcast device that periodically beams your exact location, latitude, longitude to a set of satellites. And those positions can be shared again with the home base. So people can track your progress. If they see that you stop moving for a longer period, people can know there's something wrong. You also have an SOS button. If anything happens to you, you're stuck, you have like twisted an ankle, you can press the SOS button. So the people who monitor your progress can basically call up the local authorities to send in rescue. It also has a nice button there, the check on OK button, that you can press at the end of the day when you settle down at your campsite and to inform your team at home that everything is fine and that you're calling it a day. Voila, this was a session on some real-world cases in terms of risks and learnings during solo explorations. I hope it was useful. This is probably the last, ninth and last module, which talks about general experiences and learnings in the Himalayas. The next 9 modules will be talking about various regions, the beauty, the uniqueness, some interesting experiences I've encountered while crossing 160 passes across various ranges in Uttarakhand, Lahore, Himachal, and Ladakh. So, does anyone on the call have any questions on this session? Please unmute yourself and